Hi everyone, and welcome to the handy rather. Although I'm happy at the moment as well. But the handy philosopher channel. We're going to be looking at the second recording for Plato's Gorgias. So just a quick recap. In the last one, um, I did a bit of an intro to what it was, as in what the reading was. So this is sort of a discussion amongst the elite of uh, of Athens. Um, we've waded into this discussion when another character named Callicles has stepped in and basically told Socrates that he's a bit of an idiot, that he's wasted his life studying philosophy, that if he ever finds himself being brought up on charges, he'll probably be put to death because he can't defend himself well enough, and that most importantly, it is far more contemptible to suffer wrong than do wrong because it shows how weak you are when other people can do bad things to you and you can't stop it. For Callicles, this is definitely the worst of all conditions. So in this section, we're going to see the conversation between Socrates and Callicles continue after his brutal attack, and I'll flip over. Um, Socrates replies to Callicles, initially thanking him for being such an honest and caring friend, somewhat tongue in cheek, I'm sure, um, and for truly desiring the best for him. Again, not too sure about that one, but and then we're going to get Socrates challenging Callicles to define what he means by superior people. Because earlier in the piece, Callicles said it's right for the superior person to have more and to dominate the weak, as this is endorsed by nature. Um, so this section is actually going to show us a really great example of the Socratic method. As you would assume, made famous by Socrates. But this is a process of questioning your opponent where you challenge them to define their terms as precisely as possible. You then find an exception for the definition that they've come to, and from there you then uh, either once you've shown the exception to their definition, your opponent is then forced to either change the definition or to accept that there's a contradiction and that their definition is an absolute. Either way, it shows a significant weakness in their argument. What we'll see in this section is Socrates challenging Callicles to define his terms a couple of different times. So he'll show that Callicles' definitions are pretty weak a couple of times before Callicles will eventually arrive at what he will see and what Socrates will now accept as a set definition for, and particularly a precise definition for what it is to be a superior person. Okay, so grab your books, grab your highlighters, pens, pencils, uh, and anything else you need. I don't know where I was going there, but here we go. So we're going from section 476E. I'll read from just above it where there's the italicized paragraph. These italicized paragraphs are great for navigating your way through this text. It'll help you to find where certain arguments are. But here we go. So this first part that we're going to see, we'll get Callicles giving a very broad definition of what it is to be superior, and Socrates really getting rid of it quite quickly. But I'll read through the italicized part first. So Socrates professes to be delighted to have found someone with the characteristics which will enable him to test the truth of his beliefs. He first begins to undermine Callicles' Nietzschean individualism by arguing that if it is better to obey the stronger party, then nature decrees that it is better to obey the masses, since they are naturally stronger than any individual. This is going to be the first challenge to Callicles' definition. Callicles protests rightly, but that by stronger he does not mean more capable of enforcement, or what we might think of as physical strength. And under Socrates' guidance says that the people he has in mind are the cleverer or more astute ones. Now, by clever here, he doesn't necessarily mean book smarts, although that may be part of it. A better way to think about it is almost like street smarts, where these are people who sort of know how the world works, and they know how to manipulate people, they know how to get their way, they know how to build their own power. Someone who's really clever. And if you think about it, we often use the word clever for people. Sometimes it's people who are good, and sometimes we actually use it for people who we see as being bad. So whether you see him as good or bad, a great example of the type of cleverness that Callicles is going to be endorsing is probably someone like Donald Trump. So this person is very clever. Um, are they particularly smart? Well, I mean, depends how you're measuring intelligence, really. But I think whether you like him or hate him, you'd have to say that Donald Trump's a pretty clever person. He's very good at getting his way. Okay, and so that's what we mean by this sort of cleverness. Some crude prodding from Socrates makes him narrow this down further to those who have applied their intelligence to political matters and have the courage to ensure that their will is carried out. These are the people who should dominate others and have the lion's share of wealth, and so on. So we'll see Callicles providing a couple of definitions and then finally settling on his final one that we'll then move forward with. Okay, so let's get back into the reading. So just remember that Callicles has just attacked Socrates at length. So this is Socrates replying to him. If my mind was made of gold, Callicles, don't you think I'd be delighted to find one of those stones which are used to test gold, especially if it was a really good one? I could touch my mind to it and see whether it confirmed that my mind had been properly looked after, and then at last I'd know that I was all right and that any further testing was superfluous. What's the point of this questioning of yours, Socrates? I'll tell you. I think in meeting you, I've met with just such a godsend. Why? If you confirm the beliefs I have in my mind, then I can be sure these beliefs are true, because it occurs to me that for anyone to be able to test whether or not a person's life is as it should be, um, he has to have three qualities. These are knowledge, affection, and candor. Candor is sort of honesty. And you have the complete set. I come across a lot of people, you see, who can't test me because they don't have your knowledge. And then there's another lot who are knowledgeable enough but refuse to tell me the truth because they don't care for me as you do. Then there are our two visitors here, Gorgias and Polus, who have the knowledge and are fond of me, but are too easily embarrassed to speak their minds. It's indisputable, surely, that they're riddled with inhibitions. In fact, their sense of propriety is so acute that they had the gall to contradict themselves in front of a large number of witnesses, and to do so on the most important matters in the world. You're the only one with the complete set of qualities, however. You've had what many Athenians would call an adequate education, and you're fond of me. What makes you think so? I'll tell you. I'm aware, Callicles, that the four of you, Tysander of Aphidne, Andron, the son of Androtion, and Nausicydes of Collages, uh, absolutely sure I've pronounced some of them wrong, and yourself tell one another your ideas. And I once overheard you discussing the question of how far intellectual studies should be taken. I know the conclusion you reached was that detailed knowledge was undesirable, and you advised one another to be alive to the danger of being subtly corrupted by excessive knowledge. And now you're giving me the same advice you gave your closest friends. That's good enough evidence for me. I'm sure you really are fond of me. Uh, Finally, it's clear that you're not the kind of person to let any sense of propriety stand in the way of your speaking your mind. It's not just that you yourself have said you're not, but also that your earlier words confirm the truth of this claim. So it's obvious how things now stand. Any idea of mine with which you agree during the course of our discussion will by that token have been adequately tested by us and won't require the application of further tests, because it won't have been lack of knowledge or an overdeveloped sense of propriety that made you agree with it. And since you're fond of me, as you yourself admit, you won't have done so deceitfully either. In actual fact, then, our agreements about a point will be what conclusively demonstrates its truth. I'll just pause Socrates' monologue here. So what he's said so far is that Callicles is exactly the type of person that he likes to talk to, and he's really eager to continue discussing it with Callicles because Callicles is smart, he's knowledgeable, he cares about Socrates. I think Socrates is saying this a little bit tongue-in-cheek after the attack, but Callicles himself did say, I care about you, Socrates, and this is why I'm saying this. So maybe there's something to it. Um, and he's also honest. Like he's not someone to shy away from his own beliefs just because they're going to be unpopular. Okay, and so what Socrates is now saying is, if we can agree on things, then what this is going to mean is that we must have reached something really true. If we can agree to something, that must be really, really significant because we're probably not going to agree on a whole lot of things. And so whatever we do agree on, there must be something really significant to that. And we won't require any other testing. We can take what we agree to as true. Okay. Um, so let's continue on. Now Socrates sort of begins talking about, well, what should this discussion be about? What sort of person should one be? What should a person do in his life, and how thoroughly should he devote himself to his chosen occupation? What should he be doing when he's young, and what should he be doing when he's older? The attempt to find answers to these questions is the finest work in the world, Callicles. You accused me of being misguided about these matters, but if I'm going wrong anywhere in my own life, the mistake isn't deliberate. I assure you, it's merely the result of stupidity on my part. So please don't stop the kind of criticism you began, but let me hear a convincing argument about what I ought to do with my life and how to achieve that objective. And if at any time in the future you catch me acting in a way that conflicts with any point on which I agree with you today, you can regard me as a total dimwit and as so completely hopeless that you needn't criticize me ever again. Would you go back to the beginning, though, and tell me again what you and Pindar mean by natural right? Am I right in remembering that according to you, it's the forcible seizure of property belonging to inferior people by anyone who is superior? It's the dominance of the worse by the better, and it's the unequal distribution of goods so that the elite have more than second-rate people. And Callicles replies with, that's the view I expressed earlier, and you'd hear the same from me now. So before we really get into this argument, just again, quick summary. So Socrates has now said to Callicles, well, I if I'm going wrong in my life, like you just attacked me for living such a stupid life by pursuing philosophy and doing things the way that I do. You have to believe me, I'm not living a stupid life intentionally. In fact, I was trying to lead the good life. If I'm so wrong as you're suggesting, then I want to know. Okay, and so can we enter into a discussion about these things? Because I want to correct this. I don't want to be seen as a stupid person leading a stupid life. Um, if in the future you catch me acting against the advice or what we decide is correct together today, then you know that I'm a complete dimwit, and that you're wasting your time with me. All right. And then he summarized. So just to be clear, you're arguing, this is Socrates saying this to Callicles, you're arguing that it's right for the superior people to be able to take the property of the inferior and to rule over them. Is that correct? And Callicles says, yes, that's how he feels, and that's what he thinks is correct. Okay. So do you distinguish, so this is Socrates, do you distinguish between better and superior? I wasn't clear about this before either. Um, are you describing stronger people as superior and saying that weaker people should be subject to someone who's stronger? I think that was the point of your earlier claim, that it's in keeping with natural right for big countries to attack small ones because they're superior and stronger? If so, you're counting superior, stronger, and better as synonyms or words that have the same meaning. Or is it possible for a better person to be inferior and comparatively weak, and for a superior person to be relatively bad? Or do better and superior mean the same? Please, can you define your terms more precisely and tell me whether or not superior, better, and stronger are synonyms? Um, Callicles making the first mistake he's going to make, really. All right, I state unequivocally, so with no exceptions, that they're synonymous. Okay, so better, stronger, superior are synonymous. You can see that's the first premise of the argument that I've got up on the screen at the moment. Um, okay, Socrates. Well, isn't it natural for the general populace to be superior to a single individual? After all, as you yourself said a short while ago, it's the masses who make the law under which an individual lives. Of course, they're superior to a single person, says Callicles. Um, doesn't it follow that any regulation prescribed by the masses is being prescribed by the superior group? Yes. And so it's being prescribed by better people then, isn't it? You said that to be superior is to be better, didn't you? Yes. From the standpoint of nature, then, their regulations are good, since the people who prescribe them are the superior ones. Agreed? And Callicles says, yes. Well, to cite another of your recent statements, the general populace rules that equal distribution of good is right, and that doing wrong is more contemptible than suffering wrong, doesn't it? Is that so or not? Be careful now. We wouldn't want it to be your turn to fall prey to a sense of propriety at this point. Do they or do they not hold that equal rather than unequal distribution is right? So giving things out equally instead of one person hoarding it all. And that doing wrong is more contemptible than suffering wrong. Come on, Callicles, please answer. Your agreement would count as confirmation of what I'm saying, because it would be the agreement of someone with insight or with knowledge. Um, Callicles then says, yes, all right, this is what the general populace rules. Uh, Socrates, it isn't only convention then which states that doing wrong is more contemptible than suffering wrong, or that equality is right. Nature endorses these views too. So it looks as though you were wrong in what you were saying before, and also shouldn't have used the claim that convention and nature are opposites to cast aspersions at me and accuse me of arguing unfairly in the sense that I know perfectly well that they're opposed. And so if a person is talking from the standpoint of nature, I steer the argument towards convention, and if he's talking from a conventional standpoint, I steer it towards nature. Uh, I'll read Callicles' reply and then do a bit of explanation. So Callicles, won't he ever stop talking rubbish? Tell me, Socrates, doesn't it embarrass you to pick on people's mere words at your age and to count it a godsend if someone uses the wrong expression by mistake? Of course, I mean that superior people are better. Haven't I been telling you all along that better and superior are the same in my opinion? What else do you think I've been saying? That law consists of the statements made by an assembly of slaves and assorted other forms of human debris who could be completely discounted if it weren't for the fact that they do have physical strength at their disposal. Oh, I see, Callicles. How very clever of you. So that's what you mean. Yes. Okay, so uh, we've sort of basically gotten the argument that's up on the screen now. Socrates is going to move the argument along now. But what they've said so far, cast your mind back to the first section of the reading, and Callicles accuses Socrates of basically kind of fighting dirty when he's arguing with people, and that if someone is arguing from the conventional point of view, Socrates flips it around to the natural point of view, and vice versa. Socrates is trying to disprove this claim by saying, well, actually, I'm just saying what is endorsed by both the conventional view and the natural view. So just to be clear, when we talk about conventional law, we're talking about laws made by society or laws made by mankind. Okay, these aren't necessarily present in nature. In nature, it's not right for equal distribution to occur. In nature, it seems like it's right for the strongest to get the most. Okay, which is what Callicles was arguing for. But what Socrates has pointed out is that, well, in human societies, it's the group who are stronger than the individual. And so when the group makes a law, they're not just making it from a conventional point of view. Being the stronger, they are also making it from the natural point of view because it is natural for the strong to dominate the weak. It's natural for the individual to be dominated by the group. And so, whatever the group decides is not only a conventional law, but Socrates is arguing that it's also a natural law, and that it's this because it's decided by the stronger people who are also the better and superior. Okay. Um, so, what we're going to see now is the argument that the argument progress. And so from Callicles' first definition here about better, stronger, and superior always being synonyms, he's going to move on to the idea that better and superior is actually associated with a form of cleverness. He does use another word, and we've already heard it at one point, which is the elite. Really, he's just talking about the upper class here. So, the elite and the superior are definitely synonymous in Callicles' mind. These are the people who should rule. So, who should rule? Let's call that group the elite. Now, what are the characteristics of the elite? That's what we're trying to work out. Okay, so we're going to see Callicles' second definition here, and it's going to revolve around the idea of cleverness. So, continuing on with Socrates. Actually, my friend, I've had a vague suspicion all along myself that this, or something like it, was what you meant by superior. And the reason I've been asking you all these questions is because I'm keen to turn my vague ideas into a proper understanding of your meaning. Presumably, you don't think that two people are better than one, or that your slaves are better than you just because they're stronger than you. Would you start all over again then and tell me what you mean when you call people better, since you don't mean stronger? And please use a gentler form of instruction, my friend. Otherwise, I'll have to leave your school. Uh, Callicles, you're not being altogether sincere, Socrates. Yes, I am, Callicles. I swear to you by Zethus, or Zeus, whom you invoked during your extended assault on me, when it was you who were keeping something back. Anyway, please tell me now, who are the better people according to you? And Callicles says, I mean the elite. Uh, but that doesn't explain anything. Can't you see that it's you who are stuck at the level of mere words? Tell me, what is it that makes people better and superior? Is it greater cleverness or what? So here we see Socrates really holding Callicles' hand and leading him into the definition that Socrates knows he's trying to make, but he's, dragging Callicles along. Um, yes, that's it, definitely. It's greater cleverness, of course. And so remember right at the start of the recording when I was talking about cleverness, it's sort of like street smarts. Um, uh, so here's your position then. A single clever person is almost bound to be superior to 10,000 fools. Political power should be his, as in the clever person's, and they shouldn't, and they, the 10,000, should be his subjects. And it is appropriate for someone with political power to have more than his subjects. Now, I'm not picking on the form of words you used, but that, I take it, is the implication of what you're saying, of a single individual being superior to 10,000. Yes, that's what I mean. In my opinion, that's what natural right is, for an individual who is better, that is, more clever, to rule over second-rate people and to have them to have more than them. So now we've really progressed the argument on, okay, and Callicles has finally started to present at least something closer to the truth. So we've now moved right away from the idea of strength. because the group is always stronger than the individual. But Callicles is being very clear. He doesn't think that that means anything when we're talking about the elite or the superior. Instead, what we need to be focusing on uh, is a form of like cleverness. And this is what gives the elite the right to rule and have more than the second rate or the human debris, as Callicles refers to them, the fools, whatever, the average person. Okay. So Socrates continues on now. Stop right there. Let's think about this assertion of yours. Imagine lots of us together in one place, just as we are now, with plenty of food and drink available. And imagine that we're a miscellaneous bunch, in the sense that we cover the whole range from strong to weak. Now, among us is a doctor. Let's suppose, in other words, someone who's more clever than the rest of us about food and drink. And it's perfectly plausible to suggest that he'd be stronger than some of us and weaker than others, since he's cleverer than the rest of us. Won't he be a better or superior dietitian? And Callicles says, I'd say so. So just to be clear, Socrates is trying to use an example here. So let's imagine you're in a place with lots of food. Who would be the person to rule over this food? Well, someone like a doctor would be the best person, okay? Because they have a form of cleverness that other people won't, a form of understanding and knowledge that other people don't, and that is about how much food is right, okay? So continuing on. So he, the doctor, to have more of this food than the rest of us then, because, is he, the doctor, to have more of this food than the rest of us then because he's better than us? Wouldn't it be more appropriate for him to use his position of authority to distribute all the food rather than squander it on himself? It's true that if he wasted it on feeding his own body, he'd have the greater share, which is something that Callicles has endorsed. Okay, the clever should have more. That's what he said. Um, but he'd also suffer for it. He'd probably feel quite ill. Now he shouldn't have. Now he should have more than some and less than others, shouldn't he? Unless he was actually the weakest of us, in which case he should have the smallest share, shouldn't he? Callicles, despite being the best, isn't that so, my friend? And then Callicles responds. He sort of sees through what Socrates is doing here. Socrates is sort of taking the piss a bit, and he's trying to provide an extreme example. So on this slide here, I've got a reference to a rhetorical ploy called Reductio Ad Absurdum. Although now that I see it, it's hang on one moment. There we go. The magic of movie editing. I got rid of the N instead of reduction ad absurdum. It is now reductio ad absurdum. Now, aside from sounding very much like a Harry Potter spell, reductio ad absurdum is a argumentative technique where you try and think of a really extreme conclusion to your opponent's argument, or rather an extreme application of your opponent's argument. And by doing that, you show that the argument is quite absurd. So this is kind of what Socrates is doing here, reductio ad absurdum, where Callicles has said it is right for clever people to have more than the inferior people, or those who don't have cleverness. And he's now said, okay, well, a doctor's clever when it comes to food. Is it then right for a doctor to have all the food in the world and for other people to have none? So this, yeah, is reductio ad absurdum. Socrates is using this knowingly, like he knows what he's doing, and it's going to get even funnier when he starts talking about cobblers. But all he's really doing here is trying to show Callicles that he feels like he's made a better definition, but he really hasn't. He's still being quite ambiguous. Okay. Um, uh, so, Callicles, you babble on about food and drink and doctors and so on, but you're missing the point. Isn't your point that a clever person or a cleverer person is a better person? Well, is it or isn't it? And Callicles says it is. And that a better person ought to have more. Yes, but not more food and drink. Ah, Okay, and now we get Socrates really. You have to remember this discussion is happening in front of other people, and so I could very clearly imagine like Socrates' body language when he's going through this little process of just taking the absolute mickey out of Callicles. But use your imagination, kids. But I see more coats, perhaps. The best weaver should have a larger coat than anyone else, and should go around dressed in more and more gorgeous coats than anyone else. Yes? What on earth have coats got to do with it? When it comes to shoes, though, it stands to reason that the larger share has to go to the best person, which is to say the cleverest person in the field. A shoemaker, presumably, has to walk around wearing larger shoes than anyone else, and more of them, too. What have shoes got to do with anything? You keep coming out with this absurd nonsense. Well, if that kind of case is irrelevant, Callicles, perhaps you're thinking of someone like a farmer, for instance. He's a fine, clever farmer and good at his job, so I suppose he has to have more grain than anyone else and keep as much grain as possible for his own exclusive use. And then Callicles, you're just repeating yourself, Socrates, saying the same things over and over again. Um, yes, and that's not all, Callicles. I keep saying the same things about the same issues as well. God, yes, I agree. You simply never stop going on about cobblers or shoemakers, and fullers or weavers, and cooks and doctors, as if they had the slightest relevance to our discussion. And then Socrates says, why don't you tell us what is relevant? What is it right for a better, cleverer person to have more of? In what respect is it fair for him to be up on others? Are you going to refuse to tell us, as well as rejecting my suggestions? So what Socrates is saying here, what he's done with the Reductio Ad Absurdum is he's pointed out that cleverness is not a specific enough word to use. Like this is quite meaningless to say that someone's clever. Well, what do you mean? Because a doctor is clever when it comes to food, and a cobbler is clever when it comes to shoemaking. Um, so Socrates is really trying to um, get Callicles to be a little bit clearer and to get a term really well defined, because then they can move forward with the argument. If we're going to say that one person should rule over everyone else, then we need a really clear understanding of what type of person that should be. Okay, so whilst Socrates is definitely playing up to the crowd here, he is pointing out a problem with what Callicles has said so far. It's if you're going to make a statement like it's right for the superior to dominate the weak, I mean, what the hell do you mean by that? That's quite a controversial statement. And, you know, um, Hitler suggested this when he suggested that the Aryan people should, reclaim and dominate Germany again. So, okay, what do you mean? When you say superior, do you mean, is it a race? Is it, are they born into this? Is it something that anyone can learn? Like, could I become one of these superior people, or do I have to be born to it? What do you mean? And so it's quite an important question that Socrates is trying to get Callicles to answer, because it's really the core of Callicles' entire argument that superior people are better from inferior ones. Okay. Um, so let's continue. Why don't you tell us what is relevant? Okay, so Socrates has said, okay, well, if it's not cobblers and weavers, then you tell me. Okay, what what is it that makes someone superior? So Callicles, but I can only repeat what I've been saying all along. The superior people I mean aren't shoemakers or cooks. Above all, I'm thinking of people who've applied their cleverness to politics and thought about how to run their community well. But cleverness is only part of it. They also have courage, which enables them to see their policies through to the finish without losing their nerve and giving up. Okay, so now we've got Callicles progressing the argument to what will be his final definition. Okay, we're quite close to the end here. So uh, having a look at it here, Socrates sort of helps him out a little bit. So he's pushed him to now defining his terms quite clearly. Callicles doesn't mean just general cleverness. He means cleverness in the field of politics. Okay, so um, Socrates says, "My dear Callicles, there's a very obvious difference between the charges we're bringing against each other, isn't there? Your complaint about me is that in your opinion I'm constantly saying the same things, whereas I find the opposite fault in you. I think you never say the same things about the same issues. At one time, you claimed that it was extra strength which determined which people were better and superior. Then later, you said it was extra cleverness. And now you've come up with something else again. Your present idea is that the superior and better ones are the ones with extra courage. Please, Callicles, let's get this over with. Just tell me, what is it that makes people better and superior in your opinion, and what they're better and superior at? Okay, and now we've got Callicles, and I've actually written down pretty much this little part as the quote on the screen there. This is the final definition that Callicles is going to give, and Socrates is quite happy to move forward with this one. I've already said that they're clever at politics and they're brave. Political power within communities should be in the hands of people with these characteristics, and right consists in them, the rulers having more than the others who are their subjects. Okay, so the elite should dominate, should have more than the inferior in society. What makes someone elite is a type of political cleverness coupled with a form of bravery or courage. Okay, so we'll leave the reading there. There'll be another couple of sections for Plato's Gorgias. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Dialogues are always fun, aren't they? You have to imagine these two people sitting around talking to each other in your head. Um, and it certainly puts a smile on my face doing it. So hope you're enjoying it. We'll pick it up next time, where we'll start to see um, the real argument around the good life coming out here, which is Callicles is going to start arguing that the good life is the life of indulgence, and that we should be attempting to build a life where we can basically do whatever we want whenever we want to. And Socrates is going to be arguing that the core to the good life is discipline, particularly a disciplined mind. Okay, uh, so more to come. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Okay, see you all in class. Bye.